guest here in this series of conversations is my dear friend, Matt Johnston. Thank you so much for joining us here. Matt is
total pleasure.
A phenomenal human, and he and I met each other on a Tony Robbins journey at a business mastery event now, I guess 3 years ago, a little bit more than 3 years ago. And Matt is a master at innovation. And he's been an innovation executive with Indiegogo, with the Trillions Company, with IdeaLab New York. So he has had his thinking present in many of the things that we see alive and that are considered normal in our world today. So Matt, I want to welcome you to this conversation. Thanks for being here.
Complete pleasure, and it is such an odd time to be having this kind of conversation.
Yeah.
But this is, without a doubt, my favorite conversation, and you are one of the people that I turn to in navigating the future of work, and that conversation's been alive for us for years. And to your point, you know, while we may have thought it would have been one trigger, you know, technology or that we're here, what we're really talking about is how to thrive amidst change that is changing, you know, where the pace of change is changing. And certainly we get a example of it today where hour by hour, it seems like everything we thought it was going to look like last week seems like it's going to be different next week. So it's great to be able to be here with you. I'm glad to be able to kick things off. And thanks for hosting a conversation where people can start to look for new ways to approach their lives, their work. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So with that, let's dive right into this topic. We are in the space of thriving in uncertainty. And it feels, at least for me, that the only thing that we can depend on day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute, is that things are changing. And you have, in addition to the innovation component of your background, you have phenomenal expertise in how to get your mindset straight in facing and confronting uncertainty and unknowing. So I'm curious, because I think if we can get our mindset, then the rest can kind of fall into place as we begin to think about strategy and tactics. So how can we, when all this information is swirling around us and we're worried about keeping our doors open, or if our business is even going to be able to continue moving forward, how do we get into a space of possibility?
I think it starts here, and it's, you know, we'll talk about it from a perspective of like hints and ideas and ways you can sort of posture yourself in what's next. But we're here.
Yeah.
This is, there's this moment, there's you, there's me, there's all these people on the call, there's all the people in our lives, and it takes something to just get present. So, you know, it's a gift that we can offer each other and ourselves to be here now, right now. And I think that's in some ways the kind of takeaway of all takeaways is that this is when my life is happening. It's not happening at any other time. And it's so easy to get triggered and to be tempted to engage with fear. It isn't my purpose here today to remind everyone that, you know, we're surrounded by systems that are sort of organized to have you engage with fear. You know, the news, the media, games themselves are optimized for your frustration. They're not optimized for your joy, like mobile games or online games. They're optimized to give you just the right amount of frustration, not too much, not too little. Too little frustration, you don't want to play. It's not challenging. Too much frustration, you quit. So when surrounded by systems that are optimized for you to engage with fear or frustration, to be present and to resist to some extent the temptation to operate from that there's something wrong. There are certainly actions that are critical that we take given what we care about, the people in our lives and staying home and you know, the kinds of advice so that we are healthy and vital and well. But mindset is very much about being able to see things as they are. And so I want to have a bit of a conversation with you about the ways in which I've learned people can begin to posture themselves, to sort of articulate their view toward a sense of possibility, toward a sense of innovation. And I think
what are those?
So some of those are like talking about some of the games that people can play. I'm not the person to have anyone be a better employee. So this conversation is not a conversation about like how to do a better job at your job. So for people that are already entrepreneurs or awakened to a sense of entrepreneurship, or who are perhaps beginning to be forced to imagine how they might be thrive amidst this, maybe they have to step into entrepreneurship for the first time, you can begin to approach the challenge of that by thinking first about people. So innovation can sound like we're talking about technology, and we are. We're talking about the possibility of inventing new things, or maybe bringing new language to something, but it's really about people. So like advice point number one, let's talk about people.
Yeah, and especially now, because it can feel, innovation in this moment that we're in right now can feel like a shock to the system.
Yeah.
Because we're like, hold on, we just got to shore up what's going on here. How are you asking me to think differently or do differently? So talk to me about how this anchoring in people really is the fuel.
Yeah. So first, what is tempting, even a mild amount of anxiety diminishes your creativity. We're talking sort of cognitively for a moment. Yeah. When they look at, for instance, children in classrooms that have learning disabilities, all that happens in a lot of times is that the delay in understanding something can trigger just a little bit of anxiety, and then creativity shuts down. And so, first it's bringing your attention to the things that are real, the people in your life. So today, what I would recommend people begin to consider is that there are people in your life who are experiencing a profound disruption also. And one of the games that I encourage thoughtful leaders to begin to step into is to make a difference in other people's lives. This is something you do very well. You reach out to people with an open-minded, open-hearted way and listen for what they're dealing with, what they care about, what might be an opening for some kind of new action to take. So if you reached out to 100 people that are in your life, 100 people that are already in your life, and had a conversation where you committed yourself to making a difference in some way, that kind of game ends up being able to give rise to innovation. It's not the kind of innovation we're talking about is not like the myth of innovation where we're sitting in a laboratory and we're thinking about something. It's really putting yourself in an environment where you're faced with a challenge to try to break through and cause something that wasn't there before.
Yeah, so what I'm really loving and hearing, so it sounds like this is a 100-person game, meaning, okay, I'm stuck in my head right now. I'm not exactly sure what to do. Yes. A game that I could play to, first of all, it sounds sweet because I find some of the techniques that I do for my own self, the minute I drop into fear about something, if I can get into action serving somebody else, then that goes away. And I remember that the world is about something bigger. Yeah. And that's what it sounds like to me. So in addition to sort of connecting and being a spark for innovation, it's almost like, I don't know, it's like a branch being held out to you as the river's swooshing by. Like, okay, this can anchor me in. If I can show up for 100 people, make 100 phone calls,
Yeah, that you would, it's the way you said it is so powerful, that we could get caught inside our own thinking, worried or afraid or uncertain, uh, that we would do the work to bring ourselves out here, to kind of get out into the world and connect with people. So just bringing it into reality, like how would you get started?
Yeah.
So all of the CEOs that I coach today, so I have the joy of being able to coach, and if you've never had a coach before, now might be the first time to get one.
No,
Because when we're talking about coaching, you're talking about performance. You're talking about the way a coach makes a difference in football or basketball or skiing or anything else. A coach will have you perform in ways you don't see. So in one of the first steps I take with founders or founding teams that want to have innovation be either available right now or available as an ongoing practice in their business, is to make a list of the 100 people in your life that you'd be willing to have a certain kind of conversation with. Not just a kind of conversation like, how are you, let's connect, but really that you would be willing to consider them an investor or an advisor or a partner or a co-founder in something. And those kinds of conversations are different. And it's not that every single one of those people is going to turn out to be that. In fact, in my experience, the best way to play this kind of game is to be willing to have 70 out of those 100 people be a no to doing business with you in that space. But something about just the act of making that list, really taking the time to list 100 people in your life that you'd consider investors, advisors, partners, co-founders, it begins to draw forward some of the thinking about what really matters to you.
Yeah.
Sometimes that doesn't come forward just by like, what matters to me? Ask yourself that question. You can kind of get access to it by addressing it through people. And then to do the work to actually have conversations with those people, that's where life shows up. And when I'm doing that, I don't get caught by my own thinking, or I don't get, it's not a lean back. It's really leaning forward. The way I think you do your work is to build relationships with extraordinary people, and out of that, innovation emerges. Does that communicate?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's my experience as well. Oftentimes, because you never know what's going to come out of a conversation until you have the conversation. You never know where somebody else might be in their world. Now, I want to just flip this a little bit, because some of the conversations, I see the names of the people who are here in the room with us. And by the way, everybody who's here, there is a Q&A chat bar that you can type some questions into should those rise up, and we will do our best to answer them. But as I know the folks in the room, some of them might be thinking, but I'm not looking for a co-founder, or like I'm not an early stage tech startup, so these words might not fit into my business. And I know, because you and I have had these conversations a lot, that that's an assumption about what that means. So could you translate that into why it's applicable for all kinds of businesses to be in this game? Because it so is.
Yeah, part of, there's some extraordinary people coming later today, some conversations that you've set up to just a real diversity of perspectives and voices on this moment. And I think the intention here in this conversation is to encourage people to consider what we're talking about here as a kind of like athletic readiness for what's happening and what's next. That just the act of bringing yourself forward to sort of imagine who in your life you'd consider an investor, an advisor, a partner, a co-founder. When I say investor, that's a pretty clean word. It's people who have money, capital to put to work. Invest doesn't have to look like invest in a company, get stock, but people that are looking to trade dollars or money for some kind of entrepreneurial value. Just thinking about the people in your life that might be an investor. And it's a self-expression for them. And this is really key. Often people who think I'm not ready to ask someone to invest. I don't know if I have that kind of business. Some of what you might want to consider that represents is like a kind of block, a lack of freedom in imagining how to make use of energy, the way energy flow, money just being a kind of energy. So investor is imagining that there are people who want to put their energy to work in innovation. Advisors, this is one of the most effective ways to call forward like a new realm of your own leadership, is to choose the people in the choosing, in the work to say, will you be an advisor? Which is a really potent question. It's like right up there with, will you marry me? It changes things. So when you have someone in your life and you say, will you be an advisor? Will you commit to being in a conversation with me quarterly or monthly or maybe even weekly, depending on the quality of the relationship, that you would have a group of people that are willing to support you stewarding this sense of what's next. Now, it might look like a startup. It might look like a business that's designed to grow. I personally care very much about supporting people who are willing to lean into that in some way. Given what's needed in the world, it's not, the world needs things. Just turn on the TV and look, so that people would be willing to consider themselves the kind of people that could bring something new and surround it with an advisory board, consider having investors, consider having partners, people that you can do business with. Like, another way to think about this list of 100 is, who are the people that you just would love to do business with over the next 2 quarters? Yeah. People that maybe have great ecosystems that they could connect with your communities, your tribes, your people, your LinkedIn network, that merging ecosystems, in the language of our shared friend, Sean Callaghy. It's a great way to think about how to grow businesses and opportunities, is like, how might I merge this ecosystem? And finally, that we don't do it alone, and that we have people, founders, people that we'd be willing to kind of share the sense of mission with.
Yeah, this is so great, Matt. And there's something that kind of runs through all of everything that you've been talking about, which I think is useful to bring to the forefront, which is a question about assumptions. Yeah. So as somebody might say, well, I could never get 30% of 100 people to say yes to me in something.
Yeah.
And, or advisor or business partner, that doesn't work for my business.
Yeah.
And it feels to me like the moment that we're in right now, so it's sort of all bets are off. So any assumption we thought we had about our business, about what works, about what we may or may not be capable
about who we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, assumptions I have about, like, I am something, I am a teacher, I am a this. Yeah. A lot of that isn't even a safe assumption anymore.
Well, exactly. And so, earlier today I was listening to this podcast called Hidden Brain. It comes from NPR. And the research there was exactly about this. Like, human beings in general vastly underestimate their capacity to influence and enroll other people.
Yeah.
And so
yeah, this is really key. I appreciate what you're underlining. Part of what we're talking about and sort of opening up the conversation today to thrive is like thrival skills.
Yeah.
It's a willingness to develop an athletic readiness for what's happening and what's next. In the same way that you kind of have to step into going to the gym and doesn't feel like that's what there is to do. What you're saying, Elatia, is all of us suffer with some version of, like, I'm not that. We have these thoughts that, like, separate us. Yeah. What Matt's talking about, that's not me. But there's something maybe to consider, to sort of try on, like you'd try on an outfit. Like, if you just pause, and wherever you are, if you ask yourself, who are the people in my life that I would love to do business with over the next 2 quarters? And to deal with those people, and to imagine maybe they're investors, maybe they're advisors, and then to be willing to have a conversation with them about that. You might have to have that conversation in the face of these thoughts, I'm not the one, now's not the time, I'm not ready. But it's precisely that you would do that, have the conversations, who you become on the other side of those conversations is worth it. That's what's worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's beautiful, Matt. And we just had a question come in from Mohammed here. So I want to make sure that we answer it. So he asks us, and thank you, by the way, for that. In the uncertainty moments, how do we recognize a long-term value regarding startups and people? How can we even look at long-term right now when it feels like 2 minutes is the world's completely flipped on its head?
I think there's something, long-term is alluring as an idea, but I think the question kind of reveals the point. It's impossible. I have no idea.
Oh, good. Actually, that's a relief when you say it's impossible.
What I find is maybe more useful as a context is to continue to be ecologically literate in the way you talk about the future. Another way to say it is being willing to play the game of everybody wins. And we're not trained for this. We live in a culture and a world that is competitive, masculine, gladiator, and the energy of that is everywhere. It's everywhere. Say that again.
Zero-sum game.
Zero-sum game.
Period. That's it.
So the hard part is to start from everybody wins and to continue moment by moment to allow yourself to consider that. And it's a kind of thing that's sort of easy to say, maybe harder to do, but when I get stuck in my own thinking, which is the kind of impact of the question, that I could be like thinking about, oh, what's the long term? And all of a sudden I'd be thinking, that's not reality. Reality is out here, and it's in lives of people. And so for me, I have to be sure that my life is organized to pull me into communication with people. Not everybody suffers this the same way I do. So I'm just speaking personally. I like to think. I'd love to
introvert to the world unite.
Yeah. So, but I've become a bit more of an ambivert in my life and through my training, like being willing to recharge, having it possible that I can recharge from being with people and being alone. But if I don't have a game I'm playing in my life, like the one I'm recommending, where you take the time to say, okay, I don't know what the answer is. I don't even know how to think about long-term, but it turns out I can make a list of the people in my life. I can make a list of, it is easier than you might think, just from hearing it, to do the work to answer the question, who are the 100 people in my life that I'd be willing to consider potential investors, advisors, partners. And I don't have to have any answers about what I'm going to say, none of that. But if I create that context and then pull myself into communication from a particular posture, which is like, what are they dealing with? How can I contribute in a way that has everybody win? Just showing up in life that way is the precursor to allowing innovation to emerge, and that who you become after that. Like, I want to talk to that person after you play the game, then you'll have an idea. It's just not here yet.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. And what I love about this is it's getting into action without needing to know the answer.
Yeah. By definition, in fact, this is the spark. That isn't the stuff we're looking for. This isn't the knowing stuff. We need the stuff that I don't know, and that you would, in a time of this kind of uncertainty, that you would lean into more uncertainty seems like the wrong thing to do. But that's where it's at.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. Well, we have one more question here that I want to make sure we answer before we get to the top of the hour here. Sean, nice to see you. I'm so glad you're here. Sean asks, what do you recommend to get people to stop thinking of themselves in terms of these labels, these boxes that they put themselves in and others put them in? So this is perhaps the biggest challenge that he's facing, both in terms of career coaching his friends and working with employers who are looking for insert title here.
Yeah.
How do we break this box piece?
I have the idea that the box is getting broken. So, you know, the short answer is just be patient. It's like sort of all breaking as we're happening. I think there's something, life is either going to hand you a crisis, or you can do the work to foment a crisis for yourself, to create a crisis, to put yourself in a game where you are looking to make the difference for people. The labels emerge afterwards. You know, one of the things, Elatia, that you talk about, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it gets woven to the rest of the really incredible conversations you're going to have today, is things are breaking faster than we have language to describe what's breaking, much less the solutions. So all like the idea about labels is it's difficult sometimes to be with someone that is attached to that, but sometimes you have to let history do the teaching. Make yourself available to people that are ready, and to really be empowered around the fact that you might invite someone into a new future and they say no. That's transformational for them. It's a transformational condition. To not use whatever thought that is, like, I'm worried about what people are saying, how do you handle this when people are negative? That's not actually happening right now. It's an anticipated, it's like something we're anticipating might happen in these conversations we're getting ready to have, but to be able to tolerate that I'm having that thought, and step into the, you know, the tender possibility of being willing to make a difference for another human being, and then discover what's there and trust that what's there on the other side of that is worth it. And so just to sort of underline this opening, sort of the opening energy of your, you know, the day's conversations, it's like, now's the time where we really need to steward thrival skills, which is leaning in, causing, growing. And it's so much about communication with people.
Yeah, now's the time to get up off the couch with the potato chips and step into the possibility, you know. And it's, you know, it can be so tempting, but somebody sparked this for me the other day. It was like, look, if you sit down and you hide under, you know, the covers for the next 3 months, what has the world missed from your creating inside of that space? Matt, we are at the top of the hour here. You and I could speak for 1,100,000 years.
We will. Don't worry.
And we will, of course. But I want to thank you so much for being here today. And there will be more questions to follow this. And I look forward to following up with you afterwards. Thanks so much, Matt.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity. Yeah, beautiful.
Thanks.